that Hashem called to Moshe. Vaydaber Hashem Elov. And Hashem spoke to him. Actually, it doesn't say Hashem called to Moshe. It says Hashem. It just says, and he called to Moshe, and then it says, and he spoke to him, Ma'il Moed Lamer, from the tent of meeting, saying, Dayik Rabbeinu Azakim Kudei Torah. And the Alter Rebbe analyzes and look at the Torah, but Mesha is Aleph Shabbateis Vayikra, he Aleph Zeira. The fact that the letter Aleph in Chumash, in the word Vayikra, is a small Aleph. When we look in the Sefer Torah, we see the Sefer Torah writes the word Vayikra, the first four letters are normal letters, and the Aleph is small. Yesh Gimel Mine Oisius. There are three types of letters. Atvan Ravravin, there are large Oisius, like for example, in Kriyashma, the Ayin of Shema and the Dalit of Echad are large. Va'atvan Beinim, then there's the regular, normal-sized letters in the Sefer Torah. Va'atvan Zirin, and then there are small letters. There are letters like the Aleph of Vayikra, which are small. And he says, the entire Torah was written with average-sized letters, normal-sized letters. And there is amongst it Aleph Beis from the large letters. And Aleph Beis Atman Zirin, and there are Aleph Beis from the smaller letters, from the smaller written letters. Kimov b'Sifrei HaMesorah, like it's brought down in Sfarim that speak about the tradition involving writing the Sefer Torah, the different halachas, and so on. The Aleph, the Atman Zirin, and the letter Aleph that's to be found in small letters, here Aleph the Vayikra is the letter Aleph of the word Vayikra in our parsha. The Aleph the Atvan Ravavin, and since we're saying that each one of these has all the Aleph base, so what's the Aleph of the large letters? He b'divrei Yam b'tchilasa. It's the beginning of divrei Yamim. The Sipur told us Hamina Medaber, where it relates the story of the history of human beings. Chsiv Sham Adam Sheis Enosh. It begins over there. First there was Adam. He had a son Sheis. His son was Enosh. The Aleph the Adam, the Aleph Rabasi, and the letter Aleph of Adam is a large Aleph, and this is a famous story with Alter Rebbe. They responded to the Tzemach Tzedek. And the Tzemach Tzedek came at the Cheder and they read with him parts of Vayikra, and the Tzemach Tzedek asked, why is Vayikra with a small Aleph? So the Alter Rebbe explained to him that Moshe Rabbeinu knew his own qualities, but this made him humble. That's why he had a small Aleph. Other Medishim that knew of his own qualities, and that just the opposite. It made him full of himself, and that's why he fell through in the Chetis Hadas. Anyway, back to the Maimer. V'tzarech lahavin, we need to understand Masha Aleph Vayikra Aleph Zir. Why the Aleph of the word Vayikra is a small Aleph. Gam tzarech lahavin Masha Medayik L'Kudei Torah Sham. We also have to understand what he analyzes over there in L'Kudei Torah. Maybe Masha Kasu b'Zohar Parts Vayera, and he brings down what it says in the Zohar Parts Vayera. The Chsiv that it says Vayikra al Moshe. It says he called to Moshe v'loy ka'amar man have. He doesn't say who. It just says, and he called to Moshe. You begin a parsha, you begin a whole sefer, a chumash in Torah. It says, and he called to Moshe. Who was the one that called to Moshe? Shloi namar mihu hakoyre. It doesn't say who is the one that calls. Who is the one that called him? Gam tzarech lahavin. Another question we need to understand. The general idea that says over here. Vayikra goymer vayidaber. First it says Vayikra al Moshe, and then it says and he spoke, which is very strange. He called and what? Then he spoke. So go right straight to the words and he spoke, like throughout the Torah. It says Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe, Vayomer Hashem al Moshe, and so on. What's this Vayikra and then Vayidaber? Shekadma kriya ledibur, that preceding Hashem speaking to Moshe, there preceded the idea of calling. Move on. Seemingly, it's not understood. What's the idea of calling Moshe before he spoke to him? What was this calling about? Especially so, this pasuk is talking about Moshe Rabbeinu. And therefore, since it's talking about Moshe Rabbeinu was always on call. as the expression is. He was always available for Hashem. He didn't need to be called now and to be removed from whatever other activities he was doing. He was always available. The Bishleim about the Macher, this makes sense if it would have been someone else. You could say that the calling has to be as a preparation for speaking. Someone else, maybe even a Navi, Hashem can't just talk to the Navi out of the blue. The Navi might be doing something, not be focused, whatever. So Hashem has to call him and say, hey, come here, I have something to tell you. But that's only applicable by any other person. Moshe Rabbeinu was always ready for Hashem to speak to him. And you stand over here with me. This is especially according to what's known. That Moshe Rabbeinu stood, he was able to receive prophecy without losing himself. This means that also his body was ready to receive the nevuah. Other neviim, they fell on the ground, they lost awareness of what was going on around them because their body was not really a receptacle for Hashem to speak to them. So a person like that, you can understand that he would need to be called by Hashem to, bring him into that, if you will, spiritual space for nevuah. But Moshe Rabbeinu was always in that spiritual state of nevuah to such a degree that he separated from his wife, so he should always be ready to receive Hashem's nevuah. So if so, why would there be a need to call him? The Torah is everlasting. Especially concerning its lessons and its directives. Other parts of Torah, like for example, Karbanis, even though the concept and the lesson of Karbanis is there, the physical Karbanis we cannot do now. But the lessons of it, it's called Hayra, all of its directives and lessons, they are everlasting lessons in the service of a Yit Hashem. That is the goal of a person's creations, to serve Hashem. Like it says, I was created to serve my Maker. So therefore, since his entire purpose is to create, to serve his Maker, his entire purpose of his being is to serve his Maker, therefore you have over here these everlasting lessons that he has to be directed from Torah what to do. So therefore, so too in all the above mentioned questions and issues about Vayikra El Moshe, it must be talking about avodas and things that have to do a lesson avodas Hashem. They're not just things that the Torah records. So the Rebbe says in the second paragraph on the page, Yuvin calls it Bahagdim. All of this will be understood by prefacing. The Chazal say, why does it say in Shir Hashirim, I have come to my garden? And the expression, my garden, is Lignuni, my special place, my place of delight. That when Hashem came down on Har Sinai, and even more so, when he settled in the Mishkan, as we mentioned, I think, at one time, that the cloud that was on Har Sinai moved from Har Sinai once the Mishkan was erected and settled over the Mishkan. And that cloud is spoken about at the end of Parshas Pekudei, at the end of last week's Parsha. So Hashem didn't visit the Mishkan as a new thing, didn't visit Har Sinai as a new thing, but really, this world was the Eibishter's main place initially. The Iker Shechina Matachtayin Ma'isa, because the main place of the Shechina was down here below. So all of this, the Shechina being in this world, was here before. So what do we need in Matan Torah? And what's the specifics? What's the idea of Matan Torah? That Hashem's main place was here in the world initially. That's the way the creation was on its own. Even before anybody was there, even before Torah was given, even before Adam Rishon, Hashem's main place was here in this world. So in other words, it was the natural state of creation, the natural state of the world, that Hashem was there. There has to be in this also the service of a person. I was created to serve my maker, kanal, like we said before. To add in the lights, to add in godly revelations, and that is done through Torah, more so than what was here initially in the creation of the world. Also, when the primary level of the Shekhinah, and the Shekhinah was mainly down here below, Hine, top of page Chaf Aleph, through Torah and mitzvahs, there now became increased revelation of godliness. As it's known, that the Torah preceded the world by 2,000 years. In other words, it wasn't just something that was there by Matan Torah. It was there prior to that, and meaning also higher than that, meaning higher than creation. And therefore, there was creation as it is, and Hashem's revelation in creation as it is, and then there's something greater. There's more than what creation is as it is. There's also what Torah adds. Also, at the beginning of creation, there was the idea of Torah. And through the Torah, came down additional lights and revelations. Because of this is what it says, that Hashem placed the Adam Echav, or Adam Arish, in Gan Eden to work it and to guard it. What type of working and guarding does it need? So the Chazal say it wasn't about working the fields and the fruits and the trees, but rather, Pirush Razal, the Chazal explained, la'avda, to work it. In other words, it's a proactive activity. It's talking about the 248 mitzvahs that Adam Rishon was fulfilling in Gan Eden. And the Lishamra, he's guarding from doing anything bad, and he protects it, and so on. These are the 365 negative commandments. This means Shagam beGan Eden, also in Gan Eden. And not just in Gan Eden, but Gan Eden bekedam lifnei achet, in Gan Eden early on, before anything negative happened, before the sin. So one would think, it's perfection. Still in all, through the avodah and through the guarding, in fulfillment of the 248 mitzvahs in the 365 negative commandments, Nimshach Taisvus Oiris comes down, additional lights. The Torah began, like it's explained in many places, the novelty of the Torah, the uniqueness of the Torah in Gan Eden, the way we connect Hashem here in this world, in the physical world. So our limited perception of Hashem is in the way that we only know about Hashem, but what Hashem is and what Elikus is and godly revelation, we do not know of the mehus, of the thing itself. Whereas in Gan Eden, we actually know the thing itself. It's like the difference between hearing about something described to you and then actually seeing. If a person, let's say, never saw an elephant in their lives, and someone describes it to them, it's very hard to really picture in their mind what it is, because they're only having what's called Yediyas HaMetzias. Yeah, it has a long trunk, it has rough skin, it's huge, it's fat, it's tall, it eats this and that. But it's not, you don't really get the full sense of it. When you actually see it, so then you have Yediyas HaMahus. In this world, we can only have a Yediyas HaMetzias about Elikus, but in Gan Eden, especially through the Torah, we can have a Yediyas HaMahus in Elikus, which in Kabbalah terminology, Chassidus terminology, means Gilui Rashonis V'loidak HaGilui Design Tachtoinus, the revelation of the three first, and not just the revelation of the seven lowers, which means like this. The three first generally refers to the spheres of Chabad, Chokmah Bin Das. The seven lowers are referring to the emotions. Every level has in it the 3 firsts and the 7 low ones. The 7 low ones, the emotional part of every level, is a level that has to do with the externalities. So what a person can grasp of Elikus in this world is only the 7 tachtoinis, the one that has to do with the chitzonis. Whereas the Gimel Rishonis, what the thing itself is, that you can't grasp. That's like Gilui HaMahus. But in Gan Eden, especially through Torah, they were able to grasp the idea of Gimel Rishonis. Okay, so we were explaining that that's the Chiddush of the Torah in Gan Eden, that now you can have the level of Asagas HaMahus, whereas if you wouldn't have had the Torah in Gan Eden, only Gan Eden alone, you'd only have Yediyas HaMetzias. That's what it means, that even in Gan Eden, Torah affected a Tosfos Oiris. Hinei b'chol avoda tzarich liyos hisarusa d'la'ela la'oiras ha'adam. Every avoda that we do begins with isarusa milmaila. Hashem has to give us and empower us and awaken us and inspire us. And so even though it had to be la'avda l'shamra, that we had in Gan Eden, we had to do the Ramach Asin Shasal Loisa, we had to have the Torah to be able to have the Asagas HaMahus. Still in all, prior to that, this is why it says he placed him in Gan Eden. The idea of Hashem's placing Adam Arish in Gan Eden is the Yisrus Dola Eilam, that's the inspiration from above, that awakens the person down here below. The word Vayanecheu is also from the word encampment. And it says, Al pi Hashem yachanu, that they will encamp by Hashem's command. That the whole idea of when the Onan, if you remember the Onan we had in last week's parsha, the Onan would rise, they would travel, the cloud would settle, they would stop. In other words, all their encampments was by Hashem's directive. The Isa the Gemara brings down, since it's by Hashem's determination, by Hashem's decision, that they where and when they encamped, so then wherever they encamped, it wasn't considered temporary, it was considered an established place for whatever halachas the Gemara is deriving from that. So the idea of the Hashem placed Adam Arishon Gan Eden is also from the idea that he encamped them there. Since the encampment of Adam in Gan Eden, in the simple sense, was meant that he was supposed to be there for good. It was only because he messed up and he ate from the Chetz Hadas that he was sent out. But the original intention is that he should stay there. Harei al pi Hashem. So therefore it's considered by Hashem's directive, which is that's the inspiration from above that precedes any avodah that we do. So this is what we explained, that we have the 2 stages, the 2 levels. You have both the level of the avodah that we have to add to the world, in addition to the ikar shechina b'tachtonim. We have to do our avodah of la'avda l'shamra. We have to do the level of Torah to be able to reach the Gimel Rishonis, the Asagas HaMahus, and that avodah that we add oiris over what ikar shechina b'tachtonim oisa, that we are empowered by Hashem. What happened next? Things got turned around. So now we have to revisit that whole entire paradigm that was established in Gan Eden. Second paragraph on the page. All this took place at the beginning of creation. There became a descent in the world, that the whole world descended. It wasn't just Adam Rishon sinned. The whole world was affected by it. It's brought down the Medrash. It's brought down the Maimer of the yard site. The Rebbe says, like the Pasuk says, and it was in 30 years, meaning this was a Maimer the Rebbe said in Tafshin Mem, 1980, which was 30 years since the Maimer of Bas Lagani was given out in Tafshin Yud. Through the sin of Deit Zadas, the Shechina departed from the earth to the heavens, and so on and so forth. All the different sins that took place from the different generations, until Hashem departed to the seventh Rakia, which means that it wasn't just about Adam Arishan doing the Aveda, and it wasn't just about the Shechina, it was about the world losing out. That whole Iker Shechina B'tachtoinim Hoisa was put on hold, was something that was taken away from the world. And now there's a process of bringing that back to the way it was. Afterwards, 7 tzaddikim arose. They brought down the Shechina from above to below, until Moshe, who was the seventh of those different tzaddikim, beginning from Avraham Avinu, and V'chol Hashvi and Chavivin, and all the seventh have special favor, are especially beloved. So therefore, he had the opportunity and he had the capability is to be the one that to bring it down from the first heaven down here into this earth, which is really a twofold process. It was by Matan Torah and concluded in the Mishkan. The main revelation of godliness was in the Mikdash. Like it says in the Pasuk, Vasli Mikdash, it says, they shall make for me a Mikdash, and I will rest amongst them. So in other words, that the Mikdash was about returning things back to the way they were and the way they were meant to be. That the Shekhinah should be here in this world instead of leaving this world. The erecting of the Mishkan was on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, on the first day of Nisan. Like it says in last week's parsha, the end of Parsha Pekudei, it says, in the day of the first month, meaning the month of Nisan, on the first of the month, the year after they went out of Mitzrayim, a year later, on the first of Nisan, Takim es Mishkan Oil Moed. Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, you should erect the Mishkan of Oil Moed. And not only does it say in the Torah that he was commanded to do so, but it says that he actually did so. It says in the next aliyah, and it was in the first month, in the first day of the month, Hukama Mishkan, the Mishkan was actually erected. And what is also that day about? It's the 8th day of the training, after the 7 days of training. In Parsha Shmini, it begins with the words Vahi b'yom hashmini. What was the 8th day about over there? When it was the inauguration of the Mishkan. That was the 8th, after the 7 days of training. That on Chav Gimel Adar, they started practicing, putting the Mishkan up, taking it down, doing the different things having to do with the Mishkan. And then finally, on the 8th day, which was Rosh Chodesh Nisan, that's when it finally went into operation. Like it's explained, the special quality of this matter is that the number 8, it guards or is beyond the cycle. The normal cycle of things is 7. The cycle of the world is number 7. Shmini guards, meaning surrounds, encompasses the cycle, which means it's beyond Seder Ishtalshlus. So in other words, the day when the Mishkan was erected, the day when the Shekhinah came down, the day when things were restored to their original way they were and they were meant to be, that has to do with the number 8. Not only does it have to do with the number 8, we say them as Omer Razal, and even more so the Chazal said, that day, the day of Rosh Chodesh Nisan, not all Esra Taurus. There were 10 crowns on that day. In other words, there were 10 significant events occurred in connection with that date. And it's explained what's the significance of specifically the number 10. That idea that it was 10 things that occurred, that means that's even higher than the number 8. The level of upon 10 strands that it says that when Mashiach comes, there'll be the harp in the Beis Hamikdash will be 8 strands. That's Lamatzeach al Hashminis. But then there's Ali Yosser that will reach 10 strands, which is even higher than the number 8. Concerning this day, the day of Rosh Chodesh Nisan, It says, this month is for you, and is Bar Leil in the previous Maimer that year that I've explained. The idea that it's the newness, the new Hamshacha means that it's drawing down from beyond the Tzimtzum. And tomorrow we'll speak about this is all again what Hashem descends, just like we said about Iker Shechina B'Tachtoinim, what Hashem is doing. And then there's something else, which is beyond that, which is what a person has to accomplish.